A cup of coffee, warm sheets, sunlight filtering through the curtains, waking up next to someone you love. Isn't it one of the most joyful things? It's a moment of quiet intimacy where the rest of the world appears so distant from you, and the only thing that matters is the person in front of you. But what if waking up wasn't just about opening your eyes, but about discovering a love so powerful that it transforms your entire existence? Something that tells you that everything you knew about love before that moment was just child's play. That kind of awakening John Donne captures in his poem. While discussing the canonization, we have already gone through the details about John Donne's life. So I'll just mention here that he was a leading metaphysical poet of the 17th century, and he is famous for his use of intellect, wit, and use of conceits. If you talk about themes in his poems, it had a wide range starting from love to religion to spirituality, and you can say the entire human experience. This poetry falls into two broad categories: secular or love poetry and religious poetry. But in spite of us making these demarcations, Donne himself hardly believed that the world of the physical experience was any different from the world of the spiritual one. Whenever we read any of his poems, be it secular, be it religious, we see this very interesting blend of the two worlds which is otherwise kept so distant and separate from each other. The poem, The Good-Morrow, is technically an obit. An obit is like a good morning poem which is written after a night of togetherness, and it's supposed to be filled with a lot of emotion, gratitude for the union that the lovers experience, and a kind of hope for the future. But then this is written by John Donne, so obviously he's going to put in a lot of variations and innovations into this very popular kind of love poem, The Obit. And in a very Donne-like manner, Donne begins his poem with sharp, colloquial and natural language. I wonder by my troth, what thou and I did till we loved. So he is clearly addressing his partner here, and he's wondering what they were doing till they actually met each other and fell in love. And then he goes on talking about the experience he had before he met his lady love. Were we not weaned till then, but sucked on country pleasures childishly? And here comes the first conceit of the poem. Conceits are comparisons, in the form of metaphors or simile or parallelism, allusions, where something completely unrelated is brought in to describe something. Alright? In any case, metaphors are built on things which are unrelated, but in case of conceits, the connection seems very far-fetched. You usually don't use that kind of comparison to state these kinds of things. So he's talking about his experience when he was not aware of the presence of the lady love, or like they hadn't met. And he says that we were not weaned. So he's asking, were we not weaned till then? So what is weaned? Weaned is when a child is born, we know that the mother breastfeeds the child. And after 6 months, 1 year, the child is gradually introduced to solid food. And this process of gradually leaving the mother's milk as the source of nourishment, this process is called weaning. So if we say that a child is not weaned, it means it is still dependent on the mother's milk for nutrition. That means it's still in very young age or in a very immature age. So the poet here is saying that before he and his lady love met each other, they were childish. And whatever relationships they were engaged in, whoever they met, it was all like child's play, because it feels as if they were still not mature. And drawing that comparison further, he says sucked on country pleasures. So in this case, they were not weaned, as in they were still sucking on not mother's breast but on country pleasures. What do country pleasures represent? Country pleasures means kind of crude, vulgar, non-intellectual pleasure of the flesh. So he discards all his previous experiences as something which is immature, something which is not intellectually invigorating or memorable. So he is kind of dismissing everything he had experienced before he finds true love in his beloved. And then another comparison. Or snorted we in the seven sleepers' den? Donne assumes that we all know these stories, but if we don't know, no problem, I'm going to tell you that. Seven sleepers is an allusion. There were these seven believers or Christians who get into this cave to save themselves from Decius, who was a Roman emperor, and he hated Christians and he went on killing them. So these seven Christians, they hid themselves and the cave was sealed. And the mythology goes like this, that they woke up after 187 years. And by that time, Christianity was already established as a very prominent religion, so it was a safe time for them to come out. But when they came out of that cave, it was like a whole new world for them. So alluding to the seven sleepers, Donne wants to establish that this love which he is experiencing now is an awakening experience, just like the seven sleepers had felt when they woke up after so many years. And since this comparison is so novel, like it was never thought by any other poet, like it was never imagined by any other poet before Donne, and that is why it can be called a metaphysical conceit. And then he says, it was so. So either it was like his life was like child's play before he met his beloved, or it was like they were both sleeping in a cave, unaware of the true reality of life. But this, all pleasures fancies be. Fancies are like things which we consider as ideal, unreachable, unattainable, extreme. So, this love which he is now experiencing, it is like the most beautiful one possible, and it is like the fancy of pleasures also. So, this is the climax of his experiences. If ever any beauty I did see, like he's not saying that he didn't meet girls before her, he says that I saw girls and they were beautiful, fine, but which I desired and got. I got those girls, right? But, he says, it was but a dream of thee. So dream is like a shadow, a phantasm, something which is not real. So this girl in front of him is now the real one. Everybody else before her appears to be like a shadow, dream, something false. And he also gives this impression that his previous life before he met her is like a preparation culminating towards this moment. Like he was dreaming for this moment, he was fanciful of this moment, and now this moment has come, which makes all those previous experiences dreamlike, non-existent, unreal. And now, good morrow to our waking souls. So now that he has established the fact that spiritually they were asleep, they were not aware of reality, now it is like waking up. So this poem is literally shaped like an obeyed, because he is bidding good morrow to her, and it's also a spiritual one because like it's a metaphor. We can say that falling in love is like waking up in life, which watch not one another out of fear. So if you awake from your sleep and you look at another person who has also woken up from sleep, and there is a moment of distrust, fear, because you don't know the person. But in this case, he is not feeling anything like that. There is no fear, absolute fearlessness. For love, all love of other sides controls. So it's like once we have fallen in love, we cannot use any other way of looking at each other but with love. Okay? So it's like love is controlling our vision, our sight, and makes one little room and everywhere. So and everywhere is like an address. It's the whole universe. But since for them, both of them are sufficient to gratify each other, to satisfy each other. So they don't need any other place to go, and this one little room becomes like representation of the whole world. It's a microcosm of the whole world. And then when he talks about everywhere, he brings in references to the multiple explorations which were going on at that time. And he says, let sea discoverers to new worlds have gone. Let maps to other worlds on worlds have shown. Let us possess one world. Each hath one and is one. When he is using the word let consecutively in the beginning of 3 successive lines, this figure of speech is called anaphora, and it emphasizes the word let. And what is special about the word let? Let means he's not bothered. Let them do what they want. Let them do what they want. We will do what we want. So what is he saying here? He's saying that the sea discoverers, the explorers, they are not satisfied with their little room. So they are going out of their country, their nations, and they're exploring new places. They are drawing maps of whatever they have discovered, and some other explorer goes and, edits that map, puts maps on maps. So people are obsessed with exploring new space. But he says that I don't need to go out of my room because I have my world with me. Now, although this is a very, very common simile or metaphor employed by poets that, you are my whole world. But using this specific word, sea discoverers going to explore new places, and the word map, these words are very technical words of the world of commerce and trade. And he is using those words in context of love, and that is the hallmark of metaphysical poetry. That they bring in different kinds of subject matter, different kinds of human experience into something which is not directly connected to it. And then when he says that they are the whole world to each other, he says that each hath one and is one, which means I have my universe, you have your universe, and both those worlds are one. So there is a strange kind of assertion of unity, and at the same time a kind of equality. And this is something which I also pointed out in the canonization, that there is hardly, almost no instance of patriarchal authority or a voice of domination in Donne. And he believes in partnership, the concept of equal sharing, equal contribution in a relationship. And he says that I bring you your whole world and you bring me my whole world, and together we build our unified existence. My face in thine eye, thine in mine appears. Look the kind of symmetry he is establishing. And symmetry is the soul of relationship for him. And true plain hearts do in the faces rest. So I am looking at you, so automatically in my eyes your face is reflected, and the same thing is happening with she looking at him. And their faces are revealing the truth of their hearts. It's not like they have something on their face and something in their hearts, like, Lady Macbeth asked Macbeth to do, hide what is there in your heart and let your face not show it. No, he says that it's about honesty. Where can we find two better hemispheres without sharp north, without declining west? Now, back in those days, there was this idea of the codiform map of the world. It's, the map of the world. If it is possible for us, I'll show you there. You can look at the picture on the screen. This is a codiform structure of the map where it looks like a heart. But this world which was depicted on the map, it had very cold northern areas, because we know that the more you go towards north in the northern hemisphere, the colder it gets. And it was assumed that the sun sets in the west. So west is kind of a declining space. Anyway, he's trying to bring in the properties of the real world as depicted in the codiform map. And he says that our world, if we map it, it will not have any sharp north or declining west. It is going to be perfect. Another way of looking at it is to see this idea of hemispheres as the eyes or the eyeballs which are reflecting each other, right? And in those eyes, he doesn't find anything rash, anything limiting, or anything which is difficult to bear. like we find in the real world map. When you look at the word hemisphere, you have to imagine that it is the part of the world when you cut or you slice off the earth, you get that one half which is called hemisphere. And when two hemispheres come together, they make a whole world. So, in this context, we can also say that Donne is trying to establish that he is one hemisphere and the lover is another hemisphere. They have their individual identities, but they come together to fuse into one world. So, their world, which is created by joining of the two hemispheres, like the two lovers, their world will have no cold north zones, because coldness is what? Lack of love. So their world will not have any coldness. It will also not have any place where the sun will set. So there will be no night for them. It will be everlasting sunlight for them. Whatever dies was not mixed equally. Now, this is a very, very weird sentence, and if you take it literally, you will think, what is he trying to say? Dies means gets destroyed. Now, this is again, this concept is taken from alchemy, or you can say a kind of chemistry as a subject was practiced back in those days, and many chemists, they were really obsessed with the idea of how to produce gold. So the alchemists had this belief that whatever substance is not mixed in proper proportion disintegrates. Now, that is to some extent true. For instance, if you are building a house, and if you do not mix the cement with proper proportion of sand and stone chips and all, that mixture will not hold. Same thing happens with cooking, right? If we do not have the right proportion, the cake will never be fluffy, it will disintegrate. So whatever is not mixed properly, ideally disintegrates. So if the proportion is not right, then it will not survive. So Donne says that I and you, like he's addressing his beloved, we bring in the right kind of proportion. We contribute with the kind of equality that is required so that our love survives. So he says, whatever dies what was not mixed equally. Since they are equal, no one person is dominating over the other. If our two loves be one. So he's challenging that tradition of courtly love where it was often asserted that the man has more urgency, he has to contribute more to a relationship. No, he says if we are equal in our love, only then can we survive or love survive. So he says, if our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike, so I love you the same way as you love me, only then that none do slacken, none can die. So if I and you love in the same way, then we will never be destroyed. And in fact, this is also, you can say, an allusion, although a far-fetched one again, to Aristophanes' thought. Aristophanes thought that, and to some extent this is related to Plato also, he thought that originally human beings were both male and female, and they were shaped like globes, and this combination was so powerful, like when they were both together in one body, that they even dared to attack the gods. And the gods got so enraged that they sliced them into two halves, one male and one female. So it's like he's saying if we can recombine ourselves and turn into that globe again, that one world, then we cannot be killed, we will be immortals. And this idea of immortality through love, it is also present in the poem The Canonization, which we have already completed. I hope you have watched that also. And if that poem is not even in your syllabus, I would suggest you still go and watch that video, because it will add to your knowledge about Donne and how he is very keen on establishing the idea of equality in love. So this poem is basically about the love and spiritual awakening. You see a combination of two elements. Like on one hand, he's talking about physicality of love, and at the same time the spiritual union. Then there is this idea of the microcosmic world, like they themselves represent, their little room is representing the whole universe. We also have these philosophical and Neoplatonic ideas coming up. And if you are to prepare a list of the conceits that he is using, maybe you will be given this question in exam that analyze this as a metaphysical poem, then of course you should list at least some of the examples and also say why he uses these conceits. For instance, in the first stanza, you have the idea of weaning, that is a conceit. Then seven sleepers' den, which is an illusion and is also a conceit. So he is connecting resurrection, enlightenment, these ideas to falling in love. And then in stanza 2, you have the sea discovery conceit and this cartographic conceit that is related to map making. This is significant because 1418 to 1620, this time was actually the time of exploration, and this poem, The Good-Morrow, was written around 1633, and Donne himself had a direct link to overseas voyages in 1596. He joined Sir Walter Raleigh and the Earl of Essex on a naval expedition to the Spanish port of Cadiz. And obviously, in that expedition, he had a lot of experience about marine life, navigation, maps, compass, so many things. And therefore, we see a lot of geographic metaphors in his poetry. So, what might appear to be unrelated for us might not have felt unrelated to him. Talking about metaphysical conceits, I think you should also mention who created all those controversy, or who created all that controversy. It was Dr. Samuel Johnson. He felt that metaphysical conceits were far-fetched, and he actually used the expression yoking together heterogeneous ideas by violence. So this was his idea. Because he felt that there was no logical reason connecting the world of physical pleasure or love to the world of trade and commerce. It was T.S. Eliot who, in his essay, The Metaphysical Poets, he pointed out that for people like Donne or the other so called metaphysical poets, the worlds were not differentiated in this way. And he says that after the 17th century, a kind of dissociation of sensibility started to take place. And people had these specialization or specific zones which they felt were not compatible to be mixed together. So people of science talked about science, people of humanities talked about humanities, and people of arts, they spoke about arts, and social sciences were separate. So these difference between disciplines, all right, that was part of this evolution. But back in the time of Donne, sensibilities were unified. So it was quite natural for Donne or people like him to combine intellect with emotion. In their minds, they were united and they could express it. And honestly speaking, is emotion truly that away from intellect? I don't know. I really seriously think that if you talk about your own life experiences, like suppose you're a man of commerce and you talk about commercial things, why should it not also reflect your emotion? If you are emotional about it, you can express it. So that was the point of view of people like John Donne, which was criticized by Samuel Johnson, who didn't approve of it. If you look at the structure of this poem, again I told you, always mention that it's shaped like an obeyed, it's structured like a good morning poem, and the title itself says it. It is written in iambic pentameter. Here Donne is not deviating from the norms, he is sticking to the norm of writing love poetry in iambic pentameter. And we do have a rhyme scheme here, it's like A, B, A, B, C, C, C. Many of you were confused about how to find out rhyme scheme of a poem. Maybe I'll make a separate video someday, but for this poem it's A, B, A, B, C, C, C. The questions which you need to prepare, one is significance of title, where you will have to show how he's using various images of awakening, not just physically, literally waking up from your sleep, but a spiritual reawakening. And he's using these allusions of the seven sleepers who are also awakening. And then exploration as awakening. Like exploration means what? Europe was coming in contact with the rest of the world. So it's like they were waking up to something new. So, waking up doesn't always have to be literally from a sleep we are having, but also like a spiritual awakening. And well, this was Renaissance, right? Reawakening. So, yes, this is very much a good morning kind of a poem where he is showing waking up through all its possibilities and interpretations. Second question is, of course, significance of the metaphysical conceits, or analyze this as a metaphysical poem, which we have already discussed. Third question is, you might be asked to analyze it as a love poem. And in that case, again, you have to say how he is combining the world of emotion and the world of intellect, the world of physicality and the world of spirituality together. And you have to point out the concept of equality in love, equal contribution of both, equal participation of both. And this is where he deviates away from courtly love tradition. He doesn't glorify absence, he doesn't glorify the idea that my lady love is unattainable. He is talking about the fruitful union which equal love or equality in love can generate. So there is no hierarchy here, no domination, no subjugation, no submission, but participation. And that kind of an idea is so very powerful and at the same time so very important and yet so very difficult to attain in a relationship, that if you truly attain something like that, you can actually hope for immortality. So I hope you have understood this poem. Do let me know of any other poem by Donne which you want me to explain, or any other poem by any poet which you are finding difficult. I'll see if I can help you out with that. So till we meet again, this is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Stay subscribed, but more important, stay safe. Bye bye.